Welcome to Castle Country Radio's Meet the Candidates on KOAL 107.3 FM and 750 AM, as well as our YouTube channel, Castle Country Focus. Today, we'll be hearing from candidates for Utah Senate District 26, incumbent Republican David Hinkins and Democratic challenger Corbin Frost, as well as independent Oran Stainbrook. We now go live to tonight's moderator, Aidan Mortensen, who is in the alumni room on the campus of USU Eastern.
Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates here on KOAL 107.3 FM and 750 AM, as well as on our YouTube page, KOAL Castle Country Focus. I'll be your moderator for this evening, Aidan Mortensen. Tonight, we'll be meeting the candidates for Utah Senate District 26, Republican incumbent David Hinkins, Democrat Corbin Frost, and independent Oran Stainbrook. Over the next hour, they will be answering questions emailed in by the community. Now, before I get started, I would like to go over the rules and format for the evening. Tonight's event is open to the public, and as such, we'd like to remind those in attendance that this is not a debate, so we'd ask to please refrain from cheering, booing, or anything else that may distract the candidates. We'd also ask that you please silence your cell phones to, again, limit distractions. The format for tonight's event will be as follows. Outside of the initial introduction and closing questions, in which candidates will have 3 minutes to respond, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question that has been emailed in. The order of who will answer first has been decided before we began. After the first has had their time to go, the others will also have 2 minutes to answer. Following the initial 2 minutes, candidates will have an additional 60 seconds to respond or expand their answer, after which the other candidates will also have an additional 60 seconds. We will follow this format throughout the evening. We would like to go over some voting information at this time. Early voting for the 2024 general election will be conducted at the Corbin County Administration Building in Price in the downstairs conference room and atrium during the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. beginning Tuesday, October 29th through Friday, November 1st. On November 5th, voters may vote in person at the Corbin County Administration Building from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Early voting in Emery County will be at the Emery County Clerk Auditor's Office at 75 East Main Street in Castledale. For the general election, early voting will begin October 23rd and run until November 2nd during the hours of 8:30 to 5 p.m. Voters may vote in person on November 5th at the Emery County Clerk/Auditor's Office from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So starting off with our winner of the Pick Your Number game, you'll have 3 minutes to answer probably the easiest question of the evening. Please introduce yourself to the public. Mr. Frost, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, hi, Corbin Frost. I am sixth generation Utahn. I live up in Mapleton, so I'm the not local boy out of the three of us. I have 2 kids. I have a wife who's a faculty librarian at BYU. My background originally was in graphic design, and then I did a master's in filmmaking, and somehow from there I fell into day and swing trading in the stock market, and that's what I'm currently doing. All my family all still lives up Northern Utah way, and I'm really happy to be here. I think this district is super interesting because it's as close to representative of the breadth of Utah's people as possible, being the largest district in the state. So.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. Hinkins, we'll move on to you now. You'll have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the public.
I'm David Hinkins, and I live in Farron, Utah. I was born and raised in Orangeville. My wife is Rulaine Hinkins, and she's Rulaine Nielsen from Sunnyside, Utah, and I met her when I was working at the Horse Canyon mine for U.S. Steel, and I was living in East Corbin in Columbia, and we was married, and we have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and I went to Utah Technical College. I graduated from Emory High School. I went to Utah Technical College in Provo and electrical automation technology, and that's when I went to work at the Horse Canyon mine for U.S. Steel. And then when they was going to close the mine, because they had shut down the Geneva plant basically in Orem, and so I moved back to Orangeville, where I was born and raised, and started an electrical company, Industrial Electric Motor Service. We do work for the mines and power plants. And I was encouraged to run for the Senate in 2008 by the coal operators to try and keep the mines going as well as the power plants, and so that's been my intention, and my goal is to do that and to help bring the energy center into Emery County, and so glad to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Hinkins, and certainly not least, Mr. Stainbrook, you'll have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the public.
Hey everybody, my name is Oran Stainbrook. I'm the independent candidate. I am a born and raised Utahn, grew up here between Oran, Nephi, and Heber, and then moved to Corbin County about almost 6 years ago. I live in a small unincorporated community just outside of Helper called Kenilworth, where I've been spending the last several years revitalizing an old general store building that I bought and making it my home. So was fortunate enough to just several years ago become a first-time homeowner myself. I am a general contractor. My academic background is in architecture, is what I got my bachelor's degree in, and then I spent time studying urban design at Berkeley, and just lately have been doing an online program for public administration in preparation for a future career in government work. And I think when people think of architecture and urban design, they mostly think about just designing buildings, but the reason that I think that experience is actually really relevant to government work is because what I feel I was trained to do in architecture school was analyze complex problems that have a lot of different stakeholders and requirements and come up with creative solutions that meet the needs of as many of the requirements as necessary. So I actually see a lot of parallels between my academic training and the work of government and public administration. As for the things that I really want to focus on if I were to get elected, I think it's become clear that people statewide are struggling with the cost of living, especially housing costs. We've got 40% of Utahns currently renting, and whole generations of young people now who are struggling to become first-time homeowners. And this is something that I just recently went through myself, so I understand this issue very well. And in the years that I've been living in a rural community, I've taken a lot of time to get involved with what's going on locally, get to know my neighbors, and I've just seen a lot of the struggles that people are having firsthand. People of all ages are struggling with the cost of living. We've got a lot of serious public health challenges, particularly here in Corbin County. We've been hard hit by the substance use disorder epidemic. We've got a lot of mental health challenges. So seeing the people struggling in my community is just another reason that I was motivated to get involved and pursue more of a career in public service. But ultimately, the reason that I decided to run for office is because I wanted to serve my community, and I saw that there is a real growing need, I think, for more moderate candidates and representatives who can represent the interests of people on both sides of the aisle. I think in this current political climate in this country, we've reached a point where the political division has become quite toxic, and so I felt like there was a real opportunity for me to get in there and speak to the needs of regular working people and families.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. We'll now move on to our first question that has been emailed in on the night. We'll start with you on this one, Senator Hinkins. What safety features do you see yourself pushing for Highway 6, 40, and 191 within the district? You'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, Highway 6, we've been trying to put in more passing lanes, as well as on 191. We're going to have a lot of more passing lanes. I think we appropriated $40 million for this upcoming season to put some passing lanes there because of all the oil tankers and stuff. And it's Highway 6 is actually one of the reasons I ran. And my sister and her husband, Kay Hansen, who lived here in Price, they were killed on Highway 6 in 1975, and she was 20 years old, and he was 21 or 22, just getting back from Vietnam, and they had a 3-month-old daughter that was left for my mom and dad to raise. And it's just, everybody in this valley's lost loved ones on that highway, and it is a problem, and it seems like the better we fix the road, the faster people go and the more dangerous it gets. So I really don't have an answer for that. It'd be nice to have a 4-lane highway, and I know there will be some restrictions in the red narrows and a few places like that, but when you think about 86% of the legislature living in 4 counties, Utah Salt Lake, Weber, and Davis County. That leaves 12% of the rest of the legislature to look out for the other 25 counties. And I represent 9 counties, and this is a big responsibility for the area that we've got. It goes from Kanab to basically Heber City. And it's not just 191. There's highways along the San Juan River where we've been able to, down in Montezuma Creek to Aneth, that we've got about $120 million that has been appropriated. They've had some people run off into the San Juan River, and so there's a lot of needs. I know that Highway 6 is one of the big ones, as well as 191, and so that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, we'll move on to you for this one. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. I got it. Yeah, well, everybody that lives in southeast Utah, I think, is familiar with how harrowing of an experience it can be driving Highway 6, particularly at night and in the winter time. It's nerve-wracking, even though a lot of us have done it 100 times. You can never let your guard down because there's always a chance that there can be unpredictable conditions with snow, sleet, and ice. Even in the summertime, sometimes you get unexpected weather. There's deer jumping out all the time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can incrementally over time implement more safety measures, just make it a safer drive. Obviously, all those things are expensive, take a lot of time and money. So I think the best approach is to do it incrementally, but along with the needs of the state as we continue to grow and have more traffic, especially related to tourism. We have thousands of people coming through the canyon to go recreate in southern Utah. And so over time, I think we got to continue to make investments in making sure that's as safe of a drive as possible. As for particular concrete solutions, obviously where appropriate, stoplights I think can be helpful. Reduce speeds and signage about, I think most people are familiar with the unexpected merging of 2 lanes into one. There are usually signs warning you in advance, but sort of at the last minute, like more of an advance warning could be helpful. I think higher visibility striping and lane markers would be useful. Sometimes they're really difficult to see at night, especially with the bright lights of oncoming traffic. Better, taller barriers separating traffic where we can might be helpful. And then, anticipating places that are dangerous or prone to accidents, like just outside of the Maverick station recently, we had an accident that resulted in 5 fatalities, right after which they put in some additional lane markings, which could have helped if that had been done first.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, we'll move on to you. You will also have 2 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm all right. I think that these 2 gentlemen have covered some pretty good ideas. It can be in the driving that I've done down this way to see constituents and to recreate and to go to some of the national parks and to come down to a family cabin that we had down this way. It can be harrowing. I agree. Especially coming through the canyon there, doing whatever we can to create passing lanes and to widen the freeway and to improve the grade a little bit, as well as a little bit better lighting. I find it's pretty difficult, especially if you're driving at night and things like that, or in snow or things like that, to navigate some of those turns, and that can be improved with better stripes and reflective elements on the highways. I'm a big proponent of rail and of doing anything that we can to get some of the heavy traffic off the highway. The semi-trailers, we do so much. Transportation of goods and things like that through semi-trailers, but they can really add or kick up a big notch, kind of the stress of driving on some of these smaller country highways, and I think that anything that we can do to improve the shipment of goods and of coal and things like that through rail to get that traffic off the freeway is going to be a big improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. Hinkins, you'll have an additional 60 seconds to expand on your answer if you would like it.
Well, I would think that maybe the most important thing that we could do is probably put more highway patrol officers on the alert up there and to monitor it more and let them know that they're being watched, and because it's kind of speedway in a way, and especially the first time of snow and little ice and people going over the summit, it's icy, and so I would think maybe that might be the best solution. For the immediate solution is to get more highway patrolmen on the route.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have 60 seconds if you would like it.
Nothing further to add.
Mr. Frost, you will also have an additional 60 seconds if you would like.
I think I'm all right. Thank you.
Moving on to our next question then. On keeping the constitutional restrictions on income tax that require either a reduction of said tax or a spending of that tax on education or children's health, would you favor or oppose keeping those constitutional provisions in place or changing the Constitution to allow the legislature to spend on other areas of state government with income tax dollars? Please explain your position. Mr. Stainbrook, we will start with you on this one, and you will have 2 minutes.
So when I think about the future of Utah, I think nothing is more important than education and investing in our youth and the future generations. So I think I'm grateful that we have strong protections in place in our Constitution to protect spending and funding for education, though we are also ranked dead last currently in the nation for per student spending. So I am concerned that if we erode those constitutional protections for funding education, that we are going to divest further from putting that funding to good use and educating our youth to be better prepared for the future. So I recognize the state has a greater need for budgetary flexibility, and interestingly, this is in my mind related to there's a debate about the use of transient room tax revenues and the need for counties to have greater flexibility with those funds. So I see kind of a need at both levels of government for greater budgetary flexibility. I just hope that we can find creative solutions to meet both needs without compromising education.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have 2 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think that that Oran and I agree there. That the state legislature hasn't really gone out of its way to show us that we're committed to fully funding education in the state of Utah. Being dead last in the nation for per student spending, I'm a big proponent of flexibility in spending, generally speaking, and of the ability to address issues on an as-need basis and an as-come basis. But until we see a commitment from the Utah State Legislature to really properly fund education in Utah and to prioritize that, and to understand that while education certainly begins in the home and is going to get its floor and its base built out with people in their home, many of our teachers are buying their own supplies and spending the little money that they have on students and need parents to donate classroom supplies to them because we're not giving them the resources that they need to do the job that we've asked them to do. And so I would be in favor of keeping, until we see more willingness from the legislature to fully fund education in Utah properly. I would like to see a continuation of those guardrails to protect that chunk of funding for our educational system.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. Hinkins, you will also have 2 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. In 2008, when I was elected, I went into office in 2009 during the recession. The legislature held schools harmless. We actually, income taxes were down low. A lot of the money that would have gone to education through income taxes wasn't available. People had laid off, lost their jobs, and so they fully funded it. They held them harmless in their funding, and we also The good news is that we aren't the last in spending any longer. We're starting to move up the ladder. But the problem with the income taxes is that's where everybody goes for tax incentives. If you want solar panels, it's tax incentives. If you want businesses to come, it's tax incentives. Well, that's income tax incentives. And so that money is always coming out of the income taxes. And so if we don't backfill it, it used to be education was the most expended, the biggest budget in the state of Utah. It's now been surpassed by Health and Human Services, which is taking care of some of us older folks as we get more aged and having less children. I think it's going to be 5,000 students less in the state of Utah than it was last year. So our population of children are going down, which is a terrible news for Utah, in my opinion. I mean, it's like we could end up in Japan, where there's 9 million vacant homes in Japan. And so we also, on the county taxes that comes out, a lot of that money goes to the schools, mostly for buildings and maintenance and stuff. But anytime the county needs, the commissioners need money to run the counties, we raise taxes on the residents of their homes, and education gets probably about 50 to 60% of that. And so to get 20%, you raise it for everybody. And so people's complaining about that. So we need to be able to have a broader budget.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you'll have an additional 60 seconds to expand on your answer if you would like it.
So in order to prevent income taxes and the revenues from them from being eroded, I think maybe we can take another look at some of the corporate tax incentives that have been created in an effort to incentivize job creation, but that maybe haven't followed through. Maybe there's a way we could audit those to see if there's a room for corporations to help cover the costs. I think also it might be worth exploring adjusting the tax, the income tax, so that we don't have a flat tax, but a somewhat graduated tax rate. The flat tax has served Utah well up till now, but we're going through some growing pains, and so it might be worth another look. When it comes to education in general, and I think providing the best experience for students, we might want to rethink how we go about education in general. I think there's opportunities to take a more of a 21st century approach, building partnerships between public schools and universities, as well as companies and community organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have an additional 60 seconds if you would like it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit agnostic in terms of where, how and where we want to draw our funds for education. Senator Hinkins mentioned being concerned that income tax gets drawn on for a bunch of different other things. I think that is an argument for protecting that chunk of income. But if, and I loathe the politician who makes up an answer about things that they don't know about, and part of the job is getting into the budget, which I look forward to being able to do, and find different places. And as long as we're committed to finding that funding for education, I'm a little agnostic as to where it comes from, but I do think that we need to be fiercely protective that we know where it's coming from, and that those funds are not being siphoned off and moved into other areas of the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. Hinkins, you will also have an additional 60 seconds if you would like it.
Okay, I would just like to add to it that about 70% of the not only personal income taxes but corporate taxes goes to K-12 education, and about 20% to higher ed, and about 10% goes to special needs individuals, not just children, but actually more aged that are having disability problems. And we are trying to take this taxes off Social Security, so that's going to cut money out of the budget. And so there's a lot of things that can be cut, and it seems to be everybody's trying to use that to cut their income taxes, which really hurts education. So we need to be able to move that money around to make sure that they're held harmless in case there is another downward turn. And so thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Moving on to our next question. Again, all these questions were emailed in prior to this by the public. What role do you see the state playing in creating new watersheds so Utah can use more of its allotment under the Colorado River Compact? Currently, we only use around 40 to 45% of our allotment. Mr. Frost, we will start with you on this one, and you will have 2 minutes.
Oh, I think that the role of the state. I mean, I think that the burden in finding different ways to conserve water throughout the state is something that we shoulder together as a people. It's for my money, it's one of our great challenges. I think that we are going to rely on the legislature for leadership, both in finding innovative ways to be more water wise and to find ways that both in our communities and in our agriculture we can cut the amount of water that we're using. In terms of incentives, I'm all for incentives. I do think that we have to look at cities like Las Vegas for inspiration in that they've managed to make a city out of the desert that is extremely conservative in its water use, and turn to places like Israel where they are employing a lot of water technology in farming to continue to be able to keep their agricultural sector up while reducing water usage. I think the legislature, more than anything, to answer your question, the role of the legislature is to bring that leadership, bring that find and bring that expertise from members of our state, and to manage the budget appropriately so that we can have the incentives that we need to motivate people in the private sector to use less water in their business and in our agricultural efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. We will now move on to Mr. Hinkins. You'll have 2 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. I'm good. One of the things that we could do is continue the St. George pipeline to get water to Kanab, which is in our Senate district, as well as to St. George. We also worked on Blue Castle, the nuclear plant that was going to go into Green River. We could utilize that water. They've been able to lease it from the Garfield and Kane County, and so that's still in the making, the possibility of having a nuclear plant in Green River. The other thing would be diverting water from the Fontenelle Dam in Wyoming and bringing it and dumping it into the Bear River, and then being able to bring that into the valley of Tremonton and Brigham City and that Logan area, as well as to the surplus to go into the Great Salt Lake. That's the big concern right now in the state of Utah, is to make sure that gets filled up. Also, the Central Utah project that takes it off of the south facing of the Uinta Mountains and goes to the Central Utah project. It goes into the Strawberry Reservoir and then into the Utah Lake, Deer Creek Reservoir, then Utah Lake, and then into the Great Salt Lake. We could actually possibly do a parallel line with that. Would be a very expensive endeavor, probably as much as the Lake Powell pipeline, but it's doable. And we've kind of set Arizona, Nevada, and California on notice that they've been using our water, and we're going to start using it ourselves. We live in the second driest state in the nation outside of Nevada, and so I think it's something that we need to look at in water development and utilize what we have, but to be able to get new developments would be very crucial to our state, especially for the continued growth that they expect to have. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you'll have 2 minutes as well. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm good. Obviously, water is a huge challenge and a concern. It's more than just a resource. It's our whole way of life. Our economy depends on it. I think there are a lot of ways that we can make more efficient use of our water resources with better systems and technologies in a way that doesn't compromise our ability to continue to grow sustainably and grow our economy. Like Mr. Frost said, Las Vegas has proven it's possible in a similar desert environment. They've, in the last 20 years, grew their population 50% while conserving water 40%. The Phoenix metro area is another example. They've stored 2 million acre feet of water in underground aquifers as a buffer against periods of drought. And when you look at just the kind of climate trends, we're in a drought period. That's clear. We've got pretty reliable data going back for the whole last century, and in that time, temperatures have increased on average about 2.5 degrees, and in recent decades we've got less and less average snow melt, which affects how much water we've got through the spring and summer. So I think we just need to recognize the reality of our need to make more efficient use of water as we do continue to grow, and at the same time doing that in a way that doesn't compromise our heritage and cultural values. A big part of that being the fact that a lot of people enjoy home gardening. So I think in terms of adjusting our domestic consumption of water, we can have incentivized and tiered usage fees in place so that we're disincentivize unnecessarily large lawns. We live in a desert. Just the reality is we can't afford to be watering large areas of turf while still making it possible for people to grow their own food at home.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will have an additional 60 seconds if you would like it.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think that that the role of leaders in our government, and especially elected officials, is twofold. In that there is a legislative and a governmental component, but there's a pretty robust infrastructure of state employees and people whose job it is to kind of help flesh out the whys and hows and the nuts and bolts of how we're going to accomplish this stuff. I think also that elected officials in the state have a responsibility for sort of leading out in terms of attitude and feeling about what we're trying to accomplish, and I really think I would like to see more of that from our leaders and from our legislature in terms of being cheerleaders of being water-wise and changing the way that we think about our place in creating a home in this desert, and becoming more water-wise as a people.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, you will also have 60 seconds if you would like it.
Thank you. Actually, I believe Las Vegas is a poor example. They've actually drained Lake Mead pretty much. They're spending $1 billion to drill a lower poured piping to be able to pipe the water lower in elevation on the dam down there. And so we've actually, and they've also been trying to work on taking water from the Snake Valley, which is out west of Cedar City, and taking it on this Fish Springs side of Nevada through just east of Ely, Nevada. And so they've actually, they're the ones really kind of hurting for water along with California. But I think we just need to protect our water rights and make sure we've entered into a negotiation with the Navajo Nation. We've been able to get them $220 million from the federal government to do water resources on the reservation in Utah, on the Utah side. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have 60 seconds if you would like it.
I think there are potentially some creative adjustments we could make to thinking about, obviously, agriculture is a big water user. Somebody involved in the ranching industry told me that if we actually had more slaughterhouses locally, we could grow barley instead of alfalfa as feed for cattle, and that would significantly reduce the water required to raise feed for cattle. I'm not an expert in that industry. I just thought it was interesting. But in general, when it comes to adapting our domestic and industrial water uses for the future, I think it just comes down to needing to adopt that pioneer spirit where our ancestors came out here, they went into unexplored territory, into the unknown, facing harsh conditions, and in some ways that is what we're going into in the future. Just as these climate trends continue and we have less water and more people, I think we got to adopt that same pioneering spirit and just adapt to ensure that future generations can continue to thrive.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Moving on to our next question, how do you plan to balance work, family, and the legislature's schedule? Do you plan to work full-time outside of your elected responsibilities? Senator Hinkins, we will start with you on this one, and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And it is a big job, and it takes, they call it a part-time legislature, but I can assure you that it's a lot more than that. It's when that was sold to me as a job, it was basically a 45-day session, and that counted weekends in Salt Lake City and then maybe once a month or something in Salt Lake during the other 10 or 11 months that you have left. And so I don't know, I've been doing it for 16 years. I'm a owner of Industrial Electric Motor Service. I have, like I said, 4 children and 16 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. And I've been able to work it out so far. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the road. Like I said, in this last 2 years, they added this. It grew our Senate district quite considerably, taking in half of Wayne, Kane, and Garfield counties, as well as Santaquin, and so it grew quite a bit geographically. And you got to be, dedicated. And by the way, just for their information, you're not compensated for it other than when you're in session. And so I know that a lot of people say, well, I don't want to take money from special interest groups, but that's kind of what allows me to fund my travels is my campaign fund. And I can use it for when I go down to the Navajo Nation, down to Mexican Hat or somewhere, and the stays that pays for the motels and the gas that I consume, and to go to Kanab. And so it's a big district, and it's quite a few towns that's involved, 7 Navajo chapters that's involved as well. So, and they like to see you down there quite a bit. So, but I'll just continue doing what I've been doing for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have 2 minutes to answer. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I plan to make it a full-time job as much as I can. I've worked really hard in recent years to make public service a part-time job. I've had a lot of involvement in my local community, volunteering, serving on multiple county advisory boards, and participating in a lot of community organizations without compensation. And public service and volunteerism is something I've always found really fulfilling. So I agree that it's a massive district that takes a special kind of person to be able to invest the time necessary to cover that amount of territory. For those that don't know, our district is one of 29 in the state, and yet encompasses about a quarter of the state's total land area. In the year that I've been campaigning, I've made efforts to go visit every far-flung corner of the district as much as I can, checking to see if I can visit all these tiny little rural towns, because I think it's important that none of them get left out. And that's something that I'll continue to do if elected. It's making sure that I'm staying in close contact with the people throughout the district and understanding the unique needs in their communities, because I live in a rural unincorporated community of 200 people, so I understand the unique challenges of these rural, far-flung communities. And I've also spent time living in urban areas, so I think it's important to have that perspective and that balance as a lawmaker, a state legislator. You got to keep in mind the big picture and the needs of the state as a whole, while also advocating for the best interests of the people in your district. And as far as compensation, that was never my motivation for running for office. I think actually it's appropriate that the compensation for state legislators in the state is relatively minimal, as it should be. I don't think that should be a motivating factor in people seeking the office. I think people should seek to serve in the legislature because they are true public servants.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have 2 minutes to answer.
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, this is being the bonnet for me in some ways, in that I don't, in that I'm not a legislator, and I'm not. I view this as a job, and I think that constituents should view it as a job. We're looking for someone in a constitutional republic, or in the system of government that we have. We're hiring someone to go and be our representative, to take the time and put in the work to learn about the issues and to make those decisions. And I think that if we, if and when we expect people to, I'm the same with Oran. You don't get into this, at least the state legislature, looking for anything much of a salary. But I think what we end up with is we end up with a legislature full of people who are independently wealthy or have one of a handful of specific kind of jobs. It's why we have something, I can't remember the stat, but a quarter or a third of our legislature are in real estate, which leads to problems with expensive housing and difficulties within our housing crisis. I think that it's wise of us. We should want people from many different backgrounds, and to give the ability to do that, you have to treat it like work, like we want to hire somebody to serve us well. It is service, but it also, I think, is something that we need to make it possible for people of many different backgrounds to do the work. In terms of balancing it for my life, I'm lucky to have work that is flexible. I can not, like I said, a lot of what I do right now is trading in the stock market. I can take the legislative session off and do that work, but we shouldn't be restricted only to people who are that flexible that can serve in government.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, you will have an additional 60 seconds if you would like it.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to add that I do have my own business, but I'm also partners with my two younger brothers, and so they've been very kind to be able to take over the business while I've been gone. And so I've also got a son that runs my ranch for me that I can dedicate time for it. But we make about $15,000 a year being in the legislature, up to $17,000 or $18,000 if you're in leadership positions or on a lot of committees. And so it's not we're not overly compensated for that, and you don't do it for the money. And like he said, you pretty much do have to be independently wealthy in order to have this position, because you'll probably go through a couple cars, maybe at least a car in one term, and it's part-time, but we are a working legislature that it's nice to have a diverse group of people. They're not all realtors, and so I'd just like to add that.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have an additional 60 seconds if you would like it.
As far as balancing the needs of family, work, and all the rest, I don't have children of my own. I'm single, unmarried. Plan to have a family someday, but my definition of family is broad. My family is my community, honestly, here in Corbin County, and I do have family up north in the valley. A lot of nieces and nephews, a lot of grandparents and people in my life whose needs I see and recognize and want to take care of and advocate for. I have no debt. I own my home outright. I own my vehicles outright. I've worked really hard to pay off my student loans and design a lifestyle for myself that is sustainable so that my living costs are extremely low. I built a business that is, for the most part, self-sustaining, that gives me a little bit of income, requires very minimal work on my part. And so even the small salary for the state legislature's work is plenty for me to live off of.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have an additional 60 seconds if you'd like it.
Well, just to continue that idea a little bit, again, from the idea of sort of the ideas and the thoughts you want to get out, and Senator Hinkins alluded to this, the idea of that he has to end up using funds from his election fund to pay for some trips and things like that, and a lot of those donations come from special interests and from companies, and I would sure rather, as a voter, because as a Democrat in an R+20 district, I probably, it's a good chance I'll remain a voter. But as a voter, I would much rather be paying my legislators than a company that I have no control over. So.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Moving on to our next question, Mr. Stainbrook, we will start with you on this one. Do you support the school voucher process that passed the legislature this year? Do you feel it helps rural Utah, specifically the counties within our district? You'll have 2 minutes.
I'll be totally honest and admit that this is something that I don't know much about, and I would never lie to people or try to BS them and pretend I know what I'm talking about. When it comes to funding schools, I think we gotta. I'm just going to pass. Like I said, I'm not going to try to BS my way through this. All I'll say is that there are so many bills that go through the legislature. It's been challenging as a candidate, just trying to keep up with all of the information. I think there was over 1,500 bills submitted, over like a record nearly 600 pieces of legislation that passed. So I've tried to pay attention to all the things that seem most important and relevant to the people in my district and my neighbors as I've been having these conversations. But yeah, admittedly, this is something that I'd have to look deeper into and better educate myself on.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I have a difficulty with the voucher bills, and primarily because I'm a big proponent of public education by and for itself. My mother was a teacher. I've got a sister-in-law that was a teacher. My wife was a teacher for a while. I really believe in having and sustaining a public commitment to the project of educating our children and educating our populace broadly. We never know where the next Einstein is going to come from. We never know who it is that's going to come up with the great idea that's going to save our civilization. And only by educating people broadly can we give ourselves the best shot at that. I think that vouchers exist in many ways because people take issue with some aspect of how the teachers that we have decided to get into this agreement with, they're going to help us educate our children. We also want to have our druthers over every single thing they say and every single thing that they do. And if not, we're going to take these vouchers, we're going to take our money, and we're going to take it somewhere else to a private institution that more closely aligns with our personal quirks, personal values, personal things that we want to have happen. Not only does that I don't have a problem with private schools. I think that should be a right that people have, but pulling public money out in order to do that both takes money away from our public education, takes money away from people, kids, not people, but kids who are less fortunate and need that education. But also it segregates us, and it says, I don't want to be in a school with somebody who thinks differently. I don't want my child to be challenged by a different idea.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, you will also have 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you. The voucher system takes about $8,000 per pupil out of the WPU, weighted pupil unit, from the public school system. And in some cases, it's, for our area, I think it's probably not great. But if you have a special needs child that's not fitting into the school system, it's good to help the family to be able to do an online school that they can help that child with. But we ran into a lot of animosity. So some of the people that's done that, they're trying to get their kids into sports at, say, like Emory or Corbin High School, and they're kind of being denied that because of the animosity between taking that out. So it's really kind of caused a lot of conflict. We heard from the charter school group last week in interim that they want to see parity between the amount of money, and the reason that the charter schools were able to take money away from that is because they could do it, and they were willing to settle for less money at the time because they could do it cheaper and better by having smaller classes, and so to come back now after the fact and try to get more money away from the school system, I think is kind of out of line a little bit. They're wanting to have more administration. They were going to take care of that themselves out of the WPU that was allotted to them, and so I think it's a good idea in some instances, but in the general public, I think it would be probably in best interest to fix. If they feel the school system, the public school system's broken, we need to spend more money to fix it rather than to take the money out of it and to go their separate ways.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you'll have 60 additional seconds if you would like it.
So part of the reason that I'm a little less connected to what's happening in education is, like I said, I don't have children of my own yet. So when it comes to making decisions that affect the education system and our schools and students and teachers, if elected, I would be making every effort possible to communicate with parents and teachers to understand their situation, their needs and challenges, and really be deferring to them to help figure out what is the most productive way forward to continue to build a good public education system that serves students well while also accommodates for parents that want to make a different choice for their child for whatever reason. and also takes into account the fact that we have more and more charter schools. So this is something that I look forward to educating myself on more.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you will also have 60 seconds if you'd like it.
No, I think I'm all right.
Senator Hinkins, you will also have 60 seconds.
I think we've done that enough.
Moving on to our next question. Many promises are made on the campaign trail, but a single legislator does not have the power or authority to pass legislation on their own. How do you plan on accomplishing what you're telling your constituents that you will do while in office? Mr. Frost, we'll start with you on this one, and you will have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I wouldn't want to be a legislator that had absolute power to do everything that I wanted to do. I'm call myself a Utah liberal. When I was living in California or New York, I might have been a centrist there. It's hard to say, but I value the perspective of the conservative friends and family that I have in my life, both from a standpoint of helping me see things differently and look at work different, look at problems differently. I think that I think a lot about my work in filmmaking and producing and directing films. Like I said, which is what I did for a chunk of my life before this. You're leading teams of people, sometimes as many as 70, 80 people, and you've got different departments, 7, 8 departments that are coming at you with different needs. And different ideas and different ways that they think that the story should go, and you have to learn a synergistic sort of compromise. I think that compromise has become a dirty word in our politics and in our legislature, but by looking at the way that the problem or the way that the proposed solutions affect each of these departments, and really putting yourself into their shoes and wanting what they want. It helps you to create like I said, a type of compromise that is proactive, that sees things for what they need and helps us to both set a vision and find a path forward within that vision. I will end and I'll come back when I have my 60 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, same question. You will also have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Party affiliation is quite important in Utah. The gentleman that I replaced, Senator Mike Dimitrich, who passed away recently, and our regrets go out to his family. But being in the majority party, it takes 15 in the Senate to pass bills, and sometimes that's really important to get that as well. But the big importance of being in the majority caucus and majority party is to the chairmanships of appropriations and standing committees. To be able to be the chairman means a lot. You can direct the finances of the state better that way. And as of this coming year, if I'm reelected, I will be the senior senator in the state. As far as in the Senate, Senator Bramble, who's not elected to run this year, has stepped down, and so having seniority there in the majority caucus means a lot, and be able to it's all about getting our share of the money, the tax base. Like I said, 86% of the legislature lives in those 4 counties, so it's pretty important to be able to get our fair share into our roads or to our water systems. It's quite important, I think, to have the support of allies in the legislature.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have 2 minutes.
So I agree that there are a lot of instances where politicians make a lot of promises on what they will do once in office that they can't follow through on, because I think so much of the job is not about getting to have your way, but about building compromise, building relationships, working as a team. And so I don't think you can go in there and stubbornly demand that you're going to get things your way. It's about building those relationships and working together. And so I think that is how I'd work to go about the job is, especially as an independent, someone who's very moderate-minded, which I think is something that more and more people, especially in Utah, which I think is overall fairly independent-minded and becoming more and more moderate as we grow and become more of a worldly community, that I think would be helpful to have elected officials that can build that bridge, help to mediate, help to resolve conflict, and work with people on both sides of the aisle. It's hard to say without that firsthand experience of working in the legislature like Senator Hinkins has had for 16 years, what it really takes to get things done, and I know that he's been effective at that. So I'd try to follow in the footsteps of him and Mike Dimitrich and just be as much of a team player as I can, but also building relationships and bridges with local leaders throughout the district in our counties and cities, making sure that they're involved in the process, and ultimately doing whatever I can to center the voices and the needs of just everyday working people and families, especially when I feel like in office, because corporations can afford to fund lobbyists to have disproportionate amount of influence in the legislature. I think it's important to make sure that we value the voices of voters equally.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, you'll have an additional 60 seconds to expand on your answer.
Yeah, just continuing that idea of proactive and synergistic compromise, a compromise that I think that doing the work of good governance is very much like making a film or doing any kind of large-scale creative project, and getting in and seeing not only what your constituents want and need, or what your party wants and needs, but what the other party wants and needs, and really trying to create a solution that maximizes what everybody can get out of it on all sides. A bird in the hand may be worth two in the bush, but if we can work together and get in there together, then we can come away with a bird each.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, you'll also have 60 seconds if you'd like it.
Well, I would just I wasn't able to listen to the program last night of Representative Watkins, but I was in Salt Lake at meetings in Salt Lake. But she found out what the difference was being a Democrat and a Republican, and she may have talked about that last night. I really don't know, but when you're in the minority up there, you don't get involved in a lot of the decision making, and that's unfair, but that's the way it is. And when she ran first as a Democrat, and she served there and was in the minority caucus, and then she changed parties, and now she's the chairman of several committees and my co-chair for the Native American Liaison Committee. And it's unfair, but that's the way it is. And being in the majority caucus in Utah is pretty important, just to be the same in California or anywhere else.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, you will also have 60 seconds if you would like it.
Well, I kind of have a suspicion that the Republican Party being the dominant party in Utah is partly due to the fact that it just has so much momentum, and so many politicians feel the need to join the party or die or not get elected. And so I wonder how many Republicans are truly Republicans or are just adopting the name to get elected into office. I don't know, it's hard to say. But in general, I think government nowadays and going forward into the future is so much more about serving people rather than steering and having all the answers and solutions, but about facilitating collaboration between diverse stakeholders to find solutions and build partnerships. But again, I feel sensitive to the fact that it seems like sometimes corporations have had undue influence in crafting laws that suit their needs while eroding the rights of local communities and voters.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Our next set of questions that were emailed in were each directed towards a specific candidate. As such, you will each have 3 minutes to answer these questions, and there will be no rebuttal period. So we will start with you, Senator Hinkins, on this one. As a senator and a business owner, how do you plan on avoiding conflicts of interest between your elected position and your business? You have 3 minutes.
Well, actually, there is probably a conflict of interest because my interest is keeping the coal mines and power plants open in our area. And it's also how I make my living. But, all my friends and neighbors, they work there. That's their livelihood. And so it might be a conflict of interest to people on the Wasatch Front, but they enjoy the power and the natural gas that comes from our area. And so, yeah, I do have a conflict of interest because I really am concerned about the economy in our area. I've been able to have a research center where I get money appropriated from the state and from the CIB to do a research center to try to keep jobs in our area. I've personally bought a coal cleaning process out on Ridge Road that's now in Blue Sky Energy, which is using coal, repurposing it, so they won't be burning the coal. They'll be taking the kerosene out of it and also the hydrogen and other rare earth minerals and stuff that could possibly happen. So, I have a conflict of interest, and we have a chance to declare that. We are a state that we make laws, and we have to come back and live with those laws. And so I think there should be a conflict of interest as far as that goes, that I don't want to pay higher taxes, so I don't try to spend as much money as possible. I try to keep it, I have to pay taxes myself, and I try to keep them as low as possible because, it's not all that easy to survive in this economy the way it is and with the inflation that we've had. And so I declare my conflicts, but I do have a conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. Mr. Stainbrook, we will move on to you. With no previous political experience, why do you feel prepared for a potential spot with the state Senate? You'll have 3 minutes.
So I've always identified as a jack of all trades and been somebody who's always been really hungry to learn and grow and just pursue every learning opportunity that I can, every chance to build my skill set. I've sought out a diverse array of academic and professional experiences. I've worked in the building industry. I've started my own small businesses. I've experienced working with nonprofits in education. I've worked as an educator in the agriculture industry and in the building industry and on affordable housing problems, working with Habitat for Humanity. I've also gotten pretty involved with local government in recent years. Like I said, I'm serving on 2 county advisory boards for economic development and our Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm in my 2nd year of working with USU Eastern's Eastern Leaders Academy program. That's been a really incredible opportunity that's put me in close contact with so many of our local leaders, including county commissioners, mayors, business leaders. And so I've done everything I can to get plugged in, and I think that's, in my mind, why I'm actually uniquely suited for doing the work of government and public administration, because I think you have to have that jack of all trades mentality and a little bit of knowledge and experience in a lot of different areas. I think that is going to be an asset to the state legislature, whereas, like Senator Hinkins said, we have a lot of real estate agents or real estate developers and attorneys and people in finance. So I think having a diverse background and a different perspective, especially as somebody who lives in a small working class rural community, and only just recently myself became a first-time homeowner, paid off my student loans, and built my business. I'm dealing with so many of the things that are a reality for most voters in our district. So to that end, I feel like I'm very grounded and in touch with the needs and challenges of most people, and that's something that I can maintain going forward if elected.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. And finally, Mr. Frost, your question is, being from Mapleton, which many view as not being a rural area, how do you plan on benefiting your constituents in rural areas and not just focusing on the Wasatch Front? You'll have 3 minutes.
I hear that concern, and I frankly sympathize with that concern. As I mentioned up front, I'm the odd man out in terms of not being a local boy here. Like I said, I mentioned I am a 6th generation Utahn. We had a little family property down in the district here, so I've been coming down here since I was a kid, and feel a great affection for the people, and again a great affection for the fact that this district stretches from the Wasatch Front down through some of the rural counties and down to take in the Navajo Nation. And I think it's just part of the job, part of you got to be prepared to come in and talk to people and do the driving and to keep an open ear. I really think that the people who are going to know best how to address the problems in rural areas are the people who are living there, and I come in with a pretty open slate. I've got a decent education. I'm a normal bloke. I've got 2 kids and a wife, and in the middle of the middle class. So I'm dealing with schools. I'm dealing with a lot of the same issues with housing affordability costs, and I also see a lot of our problems, that we have in the state. We have a back and forth tug between our environment and our we have the waterways thing. We also have an air pollution thing, which really hits people on the Wasatch Front. But as Senator Hinkins was saying, we benefit from the electricity and the power that comes down from these rural counties and the hard work that the people put in down here. And so to be able to find that balance, I think it's just an attitude. I think you have to dial in and say, as a representative, I represent not just the people in my neighborhood, but the people in the entire district. I'm really interested in representing people as best as I can to understand their problems locally, and to bring those problems to the state legislature, and again to work as a facilitator of productive and creative problem solving and creative and productive compromise and working with some of the other legislators to solve these problems and to represent these counties.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. And before we get to our final question, I'd like to take the time to thank all 3 of you for taking the time out of your schedules to come participate in this event. In my opinion, events like these are very crucial in keeping the public informed as to who is on their ballot this November. So thank you all again, and a big thank you to Utah State University Eastern for letting us use their beautiful facilities here in the Alumni Room. Now, our final question will follow a similar format. You'll have 3 minutes to answer, and we'll start with you on this one, Mr. Stainbrook. Why should the residents of Senate District 26 vote for you? You'll have 3 minutes.
I think the voters of Senate District 26 would be wise to invest in me as their next state senator, because I'm someone who has proven that I'm taking the time and I'm doing the work to get involved, to learn about the issues, to build relationships. I've done everything I can as a private citizen on a voluntary basis, and I'll do an even better job if given the chance to represent people and continue to build those relationships and connections. I've spent time traveling all over the district, and I've tried to connect with people in every part of it to understand, what are your unique challenges and needs here. And that's something that I plan to continue to do, staying in close contact with people throughout the district. I pride myself on being a good communicator. And I don't doubt that Senator Hinkins has been responsive to his constituents, but going forward, I think it's important that we maintain our open channels of communication online. I've tried to put a lot of energy and effort into speaking publicly about my ideas and positions and the observations that I've had as I've gone through the district, and sharing that with people in a more public way. And just to highlight a few things that are some issues that people in small, far-flowing parts of the district are dealing with that I've tried to take the time to really understand. And in Moab, there was a State Bill 258 passed this year, the Municipal and Corporation Amendments Bill, that seemed to have eroded the ability for local jurisdictions and citizens to have greater say and control over the future of their communities. And this bill benefited a corporate developer that's going in to build what appears to be a luxury housing development that far from meeting their needs for affordable housing, especially workforce housing for their service industry that supports their tourism, this is only going to exacerbate the problem. It's going to continue to raise real estate values and just create more luxury vacation homes and Airbnb rentals. So I think it's important to take the time to spend time in these places and understand those issues on a deep level. Another example would be the community of White Mesa, a Native American community that for decades has been dealing with the toxic pollution that's coming from the White Mesa uranium mill. I was just down there a couple weeks ago attending their annual protest where they just try to raise awareness about the negative public health consequences that they've been dealing with, as the legislature seemingly for decades has been rolling back regulations and protections to make it easier for the uranium mill to import toxic waste from all over the world and dispose of it in an irresponsible way where there's not been oversight, and these open ponds of waste have been uncovered and exposed and polluting the air and water for this community.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Mr. Frost, same question for you. Why should the residents of Senate District 26 vote for you? You will have 3 minutes.
Okay. I think that the answer is twofold. Personally, I've talked already a little bit about. I think I've got a lot of experiences as a creative problem solver and someone who's used to working with a lot of different constituents, for lack of a better word, but people who have different needs on a project and bringing them together to find the best solution. I feel like I've got a good temperament. I can't remember who said this, but someone said of President Roosevelt, this was a really genius Supreme Court judge, I think, but after he met President Roosevelt, said that he had a B+ intellect but an A+ demeanor. I think I've got a good demeanor to bring to the table to work with people and find good solutions that benefit all parties. The second part of that, I just think is I don't want to frame this too much in terms of the state of our political discourse, in terms of Republicans and Democrats and the animosity that we have towards each other. But I think that there is a lot of that, and to be in a state that has supermajority control, it gets really, and this happens in places like California where you have a supermajority of Democrats. Like in a two-party system, which ours is always going to be, if we're not willing occasionally to go back and forth, to vote for the other party, to find people who are reasonable, who have good character, who are honest, if we're not willing to go back and forth between parties, then there can really be a calcification, I think, within supermajority states and supermajority legislatures, where parties start to act in ways that are beneficial to them and not to the members of the state and not to the members of the district. I think a lot about Amendment D here in this case, where the legislature tried to limit the public's ability to vote on amendments and to particularly to be able to do things like draw our own congressional maps, or to have an independent body draw our congressional maps rather than having the Republican Party draw those congressional maps and decide where and who is going to vote for the legislature. So I think that I'm a Democrat that knows how to work with the other side, and I think that's just healthy for our body politic.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Senator Hinkins, the same question is posed to you. Why should the residents of Senate District 26 vote for you? You will have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I would just like to tell these gentlemen, I really have appreciated running against them. They've been, sometimes there's so much hate and violence and bad words and stuff. These guys have been gentlemen, and I really appreciate that. And another thing is, these guys would be as good as I am at this job. I tell you what, in the 16 years I've been there, I've seen some real doozies, and you wonder how in the hell they ever got elected. But these guys are class men, and
Same.
You can't go wrong one way or another. And the only reason I would say that I'm in a good position for the next 4 years, I really like to see our energy center be a little bit more stable and ongoing. I'd like to see the water, that the government was gracious enough for the Utah Navajos to get water out to our Native Americans in the Utah Navajos. And we got 7 chapters down there that will have water, not only for culinary. I mean, these poor souls have to haul water with 55-gallon drums and little trailers, and you wonder how they ever going to get from one point A to point B on dirt roads. And they live in a third world nation down there, and I'd like to see that water come to fruition and be able to do that. And there's just a lot of things got going. I tell you what, I had no intention of being in the legislature this long, but I tell you what, you get projects going and you want to see them completed, and it's just something that you kind of get caught up in. And I asked Mike Dimitrich, how in the world did you ever stay there 40 years? And he says, David, it just goes from one point A to, and I really, like I said, I really appreciate these gentlemen, and I encourage everybody to get out and run for office. I mean, it ain't as easy as it looks sometimes, and it's easy to sit back and be an armchair coach, but get on the front lines and see how much fun it is. You get a lot of BS, that you catch over time. It's not all guts and glory. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's it's a demanding job, and I'd like to thank my wife personally and children. It means a lot to have their support, and it takes away your family life, but you're doing it for your kids and for your grandkids. That's about it.
Thank you, Senator Hinkins. And again, thank all 3 of you for taking the time to come participate in this event. This has been a very enlightening conversation. I'm sure the voters will appreciate it as much as we do. And again, thank you to the campus of Utah State University Eastern for letting us use their gorgeous facilities tonight here in the alumni room. And a big thank you to Jordan Buscarini and Ryan Piccolo for making us look and sound so good tonight. This will conclude our slate of Meet the Candidate events. If you want to go back and watch, we have Meet the Candidates with the Corbin County Commission candidates, Corbin County Assessor candidates, House District 67 candidates, and of course now the State Senate District 26 candidates, all available on demand on our YouTube channel, KOAL, Castle Country Focus. But until the next time, reporting for the KOAL Newsroom, I'm Aiden Mortensen.
Serving all of eastern Utah, this is News Talk 107.3 FM and 750 AM. KOAL. Price.